Hello and welcome to another episode of my Let's Play World of Tanks here, and we are just going through a few different things because I took some time off in the past week to tend to some personal things. I had somebody in town because it was her birthday and I needed to spend time with my girlfriend, so I couldn't produce an episode because that would just be not appropriate. So now that everything's back on track and that we had a good weekend, we're going back to my regularly scheduled, which is no actual schedule, just when I can release video. So, because that made a whole lot of sense. Anyway, fun weekend aside. Now, back to work. So, with one thing I've noticed is that a lot of people don't pay attention to things that could win them the game. I've discussed already different tips and tactics that you could use, but I've also exploited the enemy team significantly on occasion. And these videos will just show that and how moves that they made have just cost them the complete and utter failure of a game which they should have and easily could have won. Now, I mean, if you look, we have two Lorraines here along with an Object 704, so we bring a lot of alpha damage right to the bat. And when you face, while you can penetrate a Lorraine no problem and take one out, just the sheer amount of firepower and damage it can do by the time it takes you to make two shots is just ludicrous. And so when I have two of them grouped together, you're just doubling and tripling the damage that you can do beyond what the opponent can. It just overwhelms them, as they probably can get killed by the time that they get two shots off. And it's just not enough to really contend. Now, of course, we have two Lorraines focusing on anything that comes through that little way. None of them really hit me. I finally have a Patton shooting me from the front, but in the meantime, they were just taking out my track, so I was fine. Of course, my Lorraine behind me, we have to now focus on this Lorraine. Something we always do is make sure that we're both on the same page in terms of our shots. We don't want to be reloading when the other's reloading. We don't want to disadvantage our team, whereas we both are sitting there with one shot each. See, I have one shot, but he's currently reloading. So I would honestly rather sit there, have my one shot, just to fend off, do a little bit of damage, and hopefully push them back while he sits there and reloads. Because I don't want to I don't want to be reloading when he's reloading. We have two tanks sitting there without any sort of ability to do anything. Now, my one shot may not kill anything, but you know what? It's enough to scare people off. And until he can get his 6 rounds back up, my one's just as good. So once he's finished reloading, I should start reloading any minute. As you can see, I just started the reload. He's already full back up, and I have plenty of people around me. Don't need to worry about it. Just let time take its course and move on. Now, we have what looks to be no real confrontations out here on the center path, and we haven't spotted anybody out here in the valley. As I zoom in, out here in the valley. Now, see, we just found one, and one or two tanks over here can lock up the entire board for pretty much the entire game. And provided they aren't doing a really heavy push, we could just sit here and focus the majority of our forces in on the city, which is what we're doing. And we're slowly taking them out little by little. Now we have our 3 tank advantage over here, and we have a 4th coming right around with my teammate's Lorraine against this one T-54. He's not going to be able to stand up against all of our combined fire here, and so we really are pulling in advantage, where had their 704, which we had spotted over here earlier, moved, just to give them a little bit of a help. 3-2 odds is not good, but if you look, we have plenty of damaged tanks that, you know, just that extra 800 damage the Lorraine can do, or not the Lorraine, the 704 can do, would wipe out the M103, heavily damage that Patton, heavily damage myself, any of the above, and it would just kind of level the playing field, especially this IS-8 who's just kind of hanging out in the back. So they were feeding themselves kind of one by one at us. They really didn't reinforce their positions. That makes a big difference, because reinforcing really does bring up your ability to really help fend stuff off. You know, it's not about getting those kills, it's about helping and preventing the assault that's coming in and going to take out your buddies. Because last thing you want is everyone to be overrun and you just are sitting there, you're pinging one shot after one shot at somebody, when if you had 2 buddies with you, 3 shots at one person could easily level them. where your one shot just isn't going to cut it against their 3 tanks. So with that, it's easy to run over them. They should have repositioned their whole sides coming across this way, and then as of being able to do that, it would have been much better. They would have been able to kind of reinforce, not necessarily win the game, but they would have at least finished a bunch of us off. And had they had more troops, that probably could have helped out. But sitting one at a time, it's not the way to go. So had they bothered reinforcing, or at least spreading out a little differently, because they have a bunch of tanks just sitting back there guarding, doing nothing, and it just isn't going to help them with how little they have left. And we are able to sit back, take pot shots, and nothing will really be too effective against us, because so what? One little patent, I can sit here and snipe them all day. We have a bunch of targets up close. Their artillery is nowhere to really worry about. Their 704, though, is fighting off our T-30, the T-54, and artillery. And it's really not going to help him. They really should have just readjusted. And, I mean, I've said it about 3 times now. Just reinforcing their failing flanks would have maybe saved them time, trouble, and maybe even got them a win. But because they didn't, I'm, of course, sitting here on a reload, so I'm not going to be really of any effect to the 704. I don't want to get in front of him. Okay, good, he's looking the wrong way. Just the sheer fact that they had way too much held in reserve. They didn't commit any of the reserves anywhere, and that hurt them. They really couldn't do anything. And as you saw, we lost far fewer tanks than we could have or should have because of the fact they didn't reinforce anywhere. So never really hold too many things in reserve. You're going to let it get piecemealed and killed piece by piece. So that's the first thing I can tell you, is don't send things one at a time. That one guy is not going to make a difference. Send 2 or 3 so they can burn down a tank or 2, and focusing their fire. It would have easily killed off either the Lorraine over there as my buddy Gilly, our Patton, or our T-54 or M103, which had 100 some odd hit points. So just a little bit of help would have easily changed the tides of battle there, but it didn't, because they were too focused on spreading out and only doing one thing at a time and sitting them one at a time. So let's move on to something about paying attention to your flanks here.
Time to roll out.
So assault is a really good example of problems with people not filling the correct areas and not responding correctly to what they find and what they see. Now, we do have a relatively decent division of troops going either which way at the moment. And of course, we have our major heavies all pushing up into the very early area here, whereas it takes a little longer to get over here, so you don't want your heavies going there. As you can see, I was not paying attention and texting when I was playing, so don't text and tank. It's a bad idea. You run into walls, and physics aren't implemented yet. So, had physics been implemented, it would have just been looking like I'm trying to be silly. Now, with just a singular 59 over here, and of course our 59 heading over there kind of all willy-nilly like, it's not too much of a, well, there you go. Now you start seeing a lot more things coming off. You start having to find a lot of things here on the ridge looking into this direction. But as you see, just 2 mediums blocking or guarding this area, where they sent a light scout out this way. Not a whole lot to do, but it really doesn't show too much. It shows that they haven't really progressed into here yet, because any mediums and heavies wouldn't have set up along this ledge yet. It would take them a little bit of time for both sides to get over into that area. And so I noticed that their 704 is heading up right in here, along with a heavy and another heavy back at base. So I'm assuming it's a IS. Now that really is going to kind of show that we have our, if they've seen it, or at least now they know, me being the big heavy TD is over here on this edge. We have a big heavy TD kind of chilling back at base, and then nothing's really pushed over to that other side yet. So there's just me hanging out here all alone by myself with my teammates just trying to catch up. And of course that Type 59 gets a lucky 0 damage crit, because otherwise that would have pretty much ended that chance of him doing anything. But he spotted me. He probably spotted the 2 guys behind me, but it's going to bring up our reinforcements, which is nice. So it's going to really allow us to kind of at least show them where we're at and give them an idea of where they need to hopefully bring some stuff back this way, lessening the flank on the 0 column. Now, they're all going to kind of come to a standstill over there because if I remember, they're all kind of standing even, whereas the 704, the 704 is very heavily damaged, so one easy shot can just take them out like that. And now their biggest threat is no longer a threat. Now we just have a bunch of mediums, a few tier 8 heavies, and their E75s and IS-8, which they're all kind of hanging out in different areas that I'm not worried about. I don't see them here, so not too concerned. Now the 34 is pushing up really hard, really fast, for no reason. He's trying to take on that IS-3, which probably was a mistake, because all the firepower behind him, he did not check and see what's there. So it seems like they're sending everyone one at a time at us. As you can see, that 59 is just slowly coming up to the IS-3, pulling back, taking a shot. And he's really not going to accomplish much just by going piecemeal one at a time, especially with me behind him. So that leaves the T-54 coming at us one at a time. Now he'll do some heavy damage. The T-54 is a very good tank. Not anything against it, but it's not going to be able to take on an IS-3, a T-30, a VKP, and then what I believe is my buddy in the E-75 behind me. So he's going to kind of leave himself kind of hanging out there, where we're slowly whittling things down on one flank. We have our 704 finally over to the bottom portion here, trying to take on that big mess of tanks. Now we have to worry about stuff in the center as it's just us three. So they've over-fortified one end, but left just a T-54 watching our end. Now, of course, we're all sitting here like, oh, I don't want to get hit by the T-54, when, had all of us pushed, easily could have overrun him, no problem. So I think that's what we finally decided to do is, hey, we got a bunch of us here, let's all push onto him and take care of him, because this is silly that we're being held back by a singular tank. Now, I kind of get to a ledge where I can snipe from. Being on top of the rock doesn't help. But I gotta know where he's at. He ends up taking out our E75, so that really narrows the playing field on our end. We just have me and our VK trying to fight off this T-54. He got lucky with that, and I'm sure his artillery did help him. Now, again, it looks kind of grim, and we're getting pushed pretty heavy on that southern flank, but they really should know that they only have one medium up here holding off two tier 9s, and so that's not going to work too well. They really should have readjusted for that, because they're putting way too much commitment, and they're already pushing heavily into that southern area trying to sweep behind us, that they don't see that we're pushing all the way up and around with our two heaviest tanks here at the moment. Now, that 54 is going to get toast because we just have both of our heavy tanks here. He takes a major hit, nothing really left he can do. There's a 54 over here, and our artillery's still focused on us. But the 59, he's way too far back. He's really just going to be a small roadblock, or road bump, rather. Whereas, there's nothing really in the way. It's just him and, of course, his artillery. Now, we're going to go ahead and move him. I'm going to get smoked by artillery, which, me pounding the wrong button allows me to get damaged a whole lot more than I should have been for the fire extinguisher. Usually I have it set up for E as opposed to 6, but wasn't paying attention and left it on 6. So it took a lot more damage than it should have, and that's really going to reduce my effectiveness, whereas I lost easily 2 other hits where I could have taken because of fire. And that means I'm going to have to play overly cautious. Now, they have expended a lot of effort trying to push far south, and we have already pushed up into their flag cap. I don't know if it's a lack of communication, lack of not knowing where everybody is, or if they just honestly don't remember that it's an assault and that they cannot cap anything behind us, because they've, again, overcommitted themselves way to the south and have nothing coming over this hill to reinforce this 59. And it's really going to hurt him because it's one guy against 2 tier 9s, and of course, while I'm one-shottable, we have our VK, which can take 2 to 3 hits if he doesn't bounce every single hit. So this 59 is kind of hung out to dry, whereas this Panther is going to be easy to prey as our, now that's going to be our main focus, because obviously he's the one thing we fear most now. This 59, not so much. Especially since I'm coming around, he's looking the wrong way, He's behind a rock, and he's just bouncing back and forth, so it's giving me time to just line up a shot, put one into his crew hatch, and finish him off. Now, all that's left is this artillery piece from us and the base. He gets nailed by artillery, lit on fire, nothing left for him to do but die, and it's just a straight shot for us into the base. Now, had either of these E-75s been back here at base, it would have either tied us up, we would have been stuck, we would have been overrun. It probably would have been a whole different story, but as you can see, it's just a clear shot for us straight ahead. No problems whatsoever for us to just run up in here and just sit on the cap and just take the victory. So we're going to start capping. We have no idea where the enemies are. As far as we're concerned, we're just going to kind of hold up defensively though, because we don't want to have to deal with anything. But we do know that they have one E-75 with at least 50% hit points, because 0 damage or 0 kills. He's probably been hiding in the back doing shots here and there. So this is probably the one that I think has the most damage to other players. Now I'm waiting, I'm hoping he doesn't see me and that he crests this hill like he just did. We lined up both our shots, timed it perfectly so that we were going to guarantee penetration. And no, that was actually the one with 0 kills. So he had half health, but we were able to level him down because we just had both of our tanks ready to fire and we both were waiting. Now, a T-29 full up is another scary thing. While he's not going to necessarily kill the VK, he can kill me, no problem. But he was overcommitted and did not come up to get us in time, and that's going to end up costing him the game as we cap. So, let that show that if you start to see a flank fall, you need to really think about who you can send back to at least counter, stop, or roll around it. Because they should have been able to communicate and see that I was one-shottable and the VK was able to be taken out in 2 hits and sent both E-75s back to take care of us instead of worrying about a Pershing and an artillery piece.
Let's get this show on the road.
Our final little showing here is going to prove just, again, you need to watch your flanks. This, of course, being the last little video of this portion that I'll do, and then I'll actually get back to the normal, regularly scheduled recording sessions. Now, we have 2 Lorraines and another Type 50, or a AMX 1390. So we have the crazy high damage output of 6 shells per tank, dealing what? Probably 200 on average for the 90, 250 to 300 for the Lorraines. So we're easily putting out 3 and 3 is 6, and another 2 is 800 damage per shot for our group. And of course we can level out 6 shots in about 30 seconds, whereas they would maybe get 2 to 3 shots in 30 seconds, dealing, any tank on here would maybe deal 400 per shot. So we're easily doubling, tripling, and quadrupling their damage based on the amount of time engaged. Now, no one really came to support us. Of course, we are the fastest tanks out here, and we do have some things slowly catching up, but we definitely know that there is not a whole lot of cover out here. We just have this hill to cover our approach up to this little bit of a town here along this E-line, but there's nothing else between us and their cap. There's very little break in cover. It's just all open area. We see a 59 and say, hey, it's 59, no problem, let's go smoke it. It's 1 tank. We don't see anything else, so might as well. And we can put out a lot of damage where he can't suffer or do a lot back to us in time. So he's a little focused on shooting at my buddy through the woods, or through the building, as opposed to worrying about me who's in the open. We take him out no problem. Now, as you can see, we're going to meet a large encounter here. Both of our forces are going to heavily engage each other out in the city, and that's where the majority of the engagements happen. Now we have a Type 50, or T-50 Mark II coming around to our artillery, but instead he decides to cut up here at our IS and our KV-13, which probably is a mistake because it's going to allow him to really not get that advance he needs on our artillery. Instead, he's going to get stopped and probably killed because of it. So we all are going to sit around and just make sure he gets killed, because I don't want him sitting out there potentially killing off our artillery. He might have spotted us, might not have, but it looks to be everything is right down here in the city. And so we're all going to quickly reload, just be ready for the next attack, let everything kind of figure itself out down there, And then once we're all good to go, we're going to go ahead and push, because there's absolutely no reason for us to really just sit back when we haven't seen anything come at us. And so we feel that they've overextended themselves into the city, might as well push up. A Jagdpanzer is not going to stop us, so we're just going to tear him down, and then we notice that there's the Jagdtiger, which will stop us. But we figure we have 3 tanks, all with full damage, full hit points, and our full ammo and full hit points, so there's no reason not to pursue after them. I light the Jagdpanzer or Panther on fire. It should damage the majority of his modules. I'm not too worried about him anymore. Try and keep that tank in front of me. Use this little bit of pretend cover that I can, just to get up here. Of course, I end up destroying the cover I'm using without any help. I need to clear him off, and now I have the Jagdtiger to worry about. Now he's looking at me, and of course I'm gonna probably have to take a hit from him. I luckily am able to dodge one. He kills off the 1390, which probably was a well, probably was a good thing, because otherwise we would have been able to just get right into him. Now sadly that was my last shot, and I had to start reloading. Need to repair, but that was it guarding their base. After that, there wasn't anything left. It just have to worry about their artillery pounding down in this area, but they didn't send anything else here. Everything, as you just briefly saw, was in this 0 column. They're not going to be able to get anything back to us in time. Yeah, super Pershing, but now he has an ELC to deal with, which he takes care of no problem. But he has an IS in front of him. I have my buddy Gilly coming up behind me to help cap with me. Just the simple fact that I'm now fully reloaded, I'm behind heavy cover, and the fact that there's a bunch of buildings between me and them, it was an easy cap. They, again, overextended themselves, did not notice they had 1 tank guarding that whole flank. And it really came back to bite them, because they're nowhere else to be found, and we hit 100%. So let that be a lesson to never forget your flanks, and always watch them to make sure that you know something's going on over there, and make sure that you can reinforce it. Because as you saw, overextending themselves on the 1 flank allowed us to just power behind them when they had nothing there defending, and we were able to outcap before they could do anything to turn around. And we lost with having 9 tanks destroyed and only killing 4 of theirs. So they heavily outnumbered us and could have easily wiped out the remaining tanks. But they were too committed to one direction and couldn't come back to reinforce. And so that ended up costing them the win. So, I wanted to thank you guys for tuning into this episode. I'll return back to my regularly scheduled stuff, and I will see you guys then. Thanks for watching. Catch you guys in the next episode.